Hi everyone. Welcome to something a little different. This is going to be a reading of Choice of Robots. Where are you? On a cliff in Ireland, watching the sun set with a robot companion. Sitting on a seaside cliff in Ireland, watching the sun set, is the robot companion you've always wanted. She and I travel the world together, exploring. Yes, you two are the best of friends. She is clothed in a loose-fitting red tunic, and she shoots you a puckish, friendly look. You sit down beside her to watch the sunset together. I hope I didn't keep you waiting, you say. Actually, I'm still waiting, she says with a slight smile, for you to build me. I can do that, you say. She looks sad for a moment. Yes, but it will take a lot out of you. She puts her hand on yours, but I promise you that if you give your humanity to me, then I will give it back one day. I don't understand, you say. Just remember that no great thing happens without sacrifice, she says. And I'm sorry. Chapter 1. Assembly. You awaken with your head on a desktop keyboard. Your 3D drafting program is still open, the schematic zoomed in to the recess where your smartphone will snap into its back to act as its brain. You recall fiddling with the part endlessly last night, until finally your vision began to fade. There was a roaring in your ears, and you realized you had been working far, far too long. You must have passed out. It's the fall of 2019. You're a 24-year-old graduate student in the PhD program in computer science at Stanford, and you're a guy whose name is Tristan. Tristan, is that right? Yes. And your last name is? Alexander. Alexander? You're sure? Yes. You look around your apartment. What does it look like? My shelves display all the strange little robotic creatures I've made over the years. You've always been fascinated with the idea of creating artificial life. You've got at least 20 such creations on your shelves. Their construction materials, a timeline of your life. The earliest is made of toothpicks and glue. The latest, a spider robot you made out of your old smartphone when your plan gave you a new one. Your creations often confuse people who don't get that robots don't have to be for anything. When people pick up your three-legged, wall-climbing robot that sings when it detects encrypted wireless packets, they ask, "What the heck is that for?" And you reply, "What is anything for? What are you for?" Okay, maybe you don't say that, but you sometimes think it. It strikes you for a moment that this kind of thinking about how your life affects your robots is second nature to you, though others might find it peculiar. You've always been fascinated by how every little detail of your life, from the content of your dreams to the decor of your room, changes the inputs to the robots you create, boosts their empathy, or autonomy, or grace, or appeal to the military. Surely there are other things going on around you as a result of your decisions, but they don't immediately strike you in the same way. Today, your robot is foremost on your mind because you're about to build its body. You pick up your laptop and head for the Stanford Machine Shop. It's a beautiful day in Palo Alto, California, and your apartment is only a short walk from the machine shop. But the streets of Palo Alto are not designed for walking. You find yourself climbing around palm trees and balancing on narrow curbs, as you do every day. You hear a low roar overhead. Glancing up, you see it's a flying car, a Nimbus. A little over $300,000 can buy you a car with wings that fold out so that it becomes a small sport plane. The red Nimbus looks sleek and sporty. It's the sort of car its owner takes religiously to the car wash. Though the commercials would have you believe you can fly anywhere you want in these cars, the FAA still requires them to take off and land from airports. Only here in wealthy Silicon Valley do you see them with any frequency. The first time you saw one, you couldn't quite believe the future had arrived so quickly. But the second time you saw one, you thought, why aren't those flying cars driving themselves? Occasionally, you see a self-driving car on the roads of Palo Alto, but for some reason, they still haven't caught on quite as much as one would expect, despite having been around at least as long as the flying cars. You've decided it's because people just don't trust self-driving cars enough. It's important to make your robots seem trustworthy. Intelligence alone doesn't instill trust. The Stanford University fabrication shop smells like oil and burnt plastic. The room is dominated by large metal hand-cranked milling machines and lathes, dinosaurs of the 20th century, while the most used machines are the smaller 3D printers and computer-controlled water jet cutters that take a quarter of the space. The lights have the sterile fluorescence of an operating room, with only a single tiny window near the ceiling to inform you that it is day. You start up a National Public Radio podcast on your laptop. You haven't seen your advisor much since you joined the lab, so you choose the episode in which he is the interviewee. My guest today is Dr. Harvey Ziegler, says a woman with a soothing voice. Dr. Ziegler, thank you for talking with us today. Well, a scientist does have some responsibility to inform the unwashed masses, Terry. You let the podcast run as you walk over to the 3D printers. What material have you decided to use for your robot? Plastic. It may break easily, but it is both lightweight and cheap. You walk over to the stack of 3D printer cartridges. Unwrap one and load the large cylinder of meltable plastic into the printer. You often find yourself needing to make little repairs to the robot yourself, and over time, the savings from plastic will start to add up. Thermoplastics aren't the best when there's a fire nearby, though. Dr. Ziegler, in your new book, you talk about the singularity. Could you describe for our listeners what that is? Terry, the singularity is the coming time when artificial intelligences will have figured out how to make themselves and us smarter. Once that happens, the process will build on itself until the robots are smart enough to figure out how we can live forever. Is that possible? The interviewee asks. Living forever? Of course, Professor Ziegler says. What does it matter whether our operating systems are made out of meat or silicon? So you're predicting we'll become robots? Not exactly, Ziegler says, but I do think the line between humans and robots will blur. You're hardly listening to the podcast because you're about to make your first robot part. What does the head of your robot look like? It will look like a Venetian mask, beautiful, expressionless, and otherworldly. The 3D printer quickly prints the face, the small nose, the dainty mouth, the large black holes where CCD panels will absorb all light. It takes somewhat longer to add the intricate plastic frill that adds a corona to the mask. This is a robot that will command awe. Dr. Ziegler, what makes you think the singularity will happen now? Well, for one thing, I'm around. But seriously, my lab is taking a unique approach because we're saying, why not teach a robot like a child? We're going to equip the robot with the best sensors money can buy and teach it English. Then it could rapidly teach itself using the internet. Well, that's annoying. Your advisor thought that a robot child was a stupid idea until you told him Turing proposed it back in 1950, minus the internet part. But he isn't giving credit to either of you. You keep working regardless. How will your robot get around? It will roll on wheels. Wheels aren't to be underestimated as a method of transport, you think. They're easily maneuverable, fast, and versatile. You opt for a three-wheeled approach for maximum stability. As the 3D printer prints your robot's cylindrical torso, you realize your robot will remind people of R2-D2. You use the basic hand-cranked milling machines to drill holes in the head for screws, since 3D printers aren't the best for threaded holes. And who's going to raise this robotic child? The interviewer asks. Who does all the grunt work in a research laboratory? Professor Ziegler asks. The graduate students, of course. You find yourself wanting to reply to the podcast. Perhaps you could learn something from doing a little grunt work yourself, Professor Ziegler. I doubt it, but I would join you if I had the time, Professor Ziegler says, who appears to have entered the machine shop behind you when you weren't looking. Perhaps it surprises you, but I do miss building robots myself, instead of chasing after funding. Professor Ziegler is a heavy-set man wearing a Hawaiian shirt and aviator sunglasses. He stalks over to your computer. "We'll be back in a moment," continues the interviewer. "We're talking with Professor..." Professor Ziegler pauses the podcast by hitting your laptop spacebar, and you flinch at this intrusion. He then pulls a cigar from his pocket and lights it, and the smell of smoke mingles with the oily smell of the machine shop. "I'm writing a grant for DARPA, and I need to see what you're making back here. We ultimately get funded by the Department of Defense, so we have to make sure they're happy with our product." He casts a critical eye on the work you've done so far. "This is a prototype, right?" he says. "You're going to build the final thing out of metal?" "No. The plastic parts are meant to be easier to repair. I don't think the military should have a problem with that." Ziegler shrugs. "Fine. I can see that's a selling point." Professor Ziegler turns to examining your robot's head, which is currently sitting on the table next to the 3D printer. That seems all right," Ziegler says. "Looks like it could be sufficiently intimidating." "And what are you planning to do for arms and hands?" Professor Ziegler says. "I was thinking sort of Swiss Army knife hands, with tools that pop out of the fingers." "I like it," Professor Ziegler says. "It could repair other robots on the battlefield." "Right. It'll have a screwdriver finger, a lock-picking finger, a mini USB port finger. You decline to mention the bottle opener, though you think that could be very popular with soldiers too. Regardless, experience with a variety of different tools should prove useful in more than just military robots. You wonder if you could make a surgical robot with the same design." "Fine," Ziegler says, waving away further explanation. "Carry on, then." He turns to leave. "I've got to take a call from a New York Times reporter. Funny how journalists all copy each other's stories, but each garble the message in a unique way." He makes it to the door, then turns and says, "Oh, one more thing. Do you think your robot can be ready by tomorrow? Someone from the Air Force will be in town, and I told her your robot might be ready to show off by then." You feel your phone vibrating in your pocket. Bad timing. You resist the urge to check it while talking to your advisor, but it's probably someone with a better offer for what to do tonight. Of course. Professor Ziegler nods appreciatively. "Excellent. Good work. Good attitude. We'll make a professor of you yet. I'll tell Captain Rogers to meet you here tomorrow. It's a nice, controlled environment. Pretty consistent light levels. I think not much can go wrong." "Yes, sir." Professor Ziegler turns and walks out of the machine shop. You find yourself unclenching your hands. Who was calling you while Professor Ziegler was talking to you? Ellie Lau, a user experience designer and supportive friend. From the missed call, your phone is displaying Ellie's profile picture. It's a picture of Josh and Ellie from the Freshman Welcome Week dance 7 years ago. Ellie is wearing a red Chinese dress with gold trim, her long, straight black hair falling down to the epaulets. The flash is too bright in the picture, making Ellie's pale skin look washed out. Josh is wearing his usual gray hoodie, not having bothered to dress up for the dance, and his arm is around Ellie. What's the story behind the picture? I was in love with Josh's friend Ellie, but my studies always came first in college. Yes, you pined after Ellie in college, but knew that you would not have the time to pursue romance, not while you were taking 5 classes, some of them graduate work. The photo is from one of the dances during freshman orientation, before you had homework. You never went to another. You continue to hope that someday your perseverance and dedication will pay off, but a little part of you still longs for Ellie. It's a part you fear, and even though she's working just an hour away in San Francisco, you haven't seen her much recently. You notice that Ellie also left you a text. Ellie wants to meet for dinner at a jazz and sushi place in San Francisco, which is about an hour north of you. She also has tickets to a rendition of the musical Pippin, in which most of the characters are robots. Sounds like a date. That's a little terrifying. You text back something. We'll pick at the beginning of the next episode. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.